Hey guys, it's Chloe and welcome back to another video. This is going to be my birth story video of my two children so far. I'm going to do it in two parts. So this is part one and it'll be about Willow and how she was born. And actually today's a really good day to do this because today is the day that marks my 6-month pregnancy. So 6 months of pregnancy. So it's a special day and I've been feeling the baby kick super hard today. She's really active. Yeah, so let's get started. So this book here is my book of life. It's literally got, like, before I moved to France, it's got all of my French things in here. And when I got pregnant with Willow, all of the things that I wrote down for her birth. It's got my pregnancy tests in there from her. It's got from when I moved to Canada. It's got diaries from when I was pregnant with Willow, when I was pregnant with River, and all of that stuff. So this is literally like like you can see my pregnancy tests just like piled up. So this is a special book and I can look back and refer to this for notes and memories of things that you don't remember everything, you know, so it's good to keep a book. So that's this book, my book of life. So with Willow's birth, I find it really difficult to talk about. I lived in France at the time and it was 2015 and I never wanted kids. I didn't like kids. Every time when there'd be kids around me, I'd be like, oh, can you just like, I didn't like kids. And I wasn't interested at all in having kids. And then one day, literally this chemical thing changed in my mind and I said to Gary, I said, you know what we should do? And he said, have a baby? And I was like, yes. So we started trying. And we got pregnant super quick on the 2nd month. So we were very lucky. And I was overly cocky. I've said this before with my pregnancies. I was just like, oh, amazing. This is what was supposed to happen. This is what I'm supposed to do. I felt good. Everything was good. You know, living in France, everything was pretty easy. And we found a midwife about an hour away in Montpellier. Everything was good. Until the actual labor. So although I thought I had researched enough, I definitely hadn't. I didn't know many people to talk with about labor and their experiences. I just assumed everything would be good, and I had this really naive thought that my labor would be 6 hours. I was like, it's gonna be 6 hours long, around about, then I'm gonna finish and I'm gonna have like a nice dinner and it's gonna be magical. And it wasn't like that at all. So just like a warning, this isn't one of those really positive birth stories. This birth took me a very long time to talk about, and I've never actually been into each detail of what happened. So it's very traumatizing for me. I was very traumatized. It took me a long time to talk about and to get over. I'm still, when I look back at it now, it really upsets me. So I don't know how this is gonna go. But and this is what this video is about, talking about my birth with Willow. So it was 2015, September. Her due date was the 21st of September and my birthday is the 23rd. But in France it's a 41-week gestation. So actually I was like 39-ish weeks when she was born, but it took a while. It was a Sunday. I woke up and I walked to the bathroom and I kind of felt a gush. And I just assumed it was my waters. I was like, oh, my waters broke. This is so exciting. And actually it definitely wasn't, because it wasn't very much, and it was like a pink. Oh, okay, the front door just opened, hang on. Bit of a windy day. All right, so yeah, it was like a pink liquid. I'm assuming it was kind of maybe like my mucus plug. It wasn't that, like a mucus plug, but it seemed, I think that's what it probably was. Some people lose an actual plug of mucus. I didn't do that. It was just like a liquid. So I just assumed it was my water. So I called my midwife and I said, this is what happened. And she's an hour away. So I was like, you know, don't rush down here. So that was at like 9-ish in the morning, 8:30, 9 a.m. I haven't actually written any of this down. This is just vividly in my mind, this birth. So after that, after the next few hours, I slowly started getting mild contractions, and I was new. I've never done this before, so I was like writing everything down, prepping loads of food. I wasn't vegan back then, so we made like this big chicken and a big old dinner to make keep my energy up. And we went for a walk in the vines because we lived in the south of France and it was just all vineyards. So I was like, right, let's get this labor going. And then my midwife came down and she was like, oh, you're about 1 centimeter. And I don't remember, this was the first day. And she said, oh, you're about 1 centimeter. I was like, oh, okay. And then things picked up with my contractions. They just got more and more intense. And so the first day, I just had like, by the end of the first day, my contractions were pretty strong, but I was still only 1 centimeter. So Julie, my midwife, went home and she came back the next day and I couldn't sleep because every couple of minutes I would just have contractions, but they would be so irregular. It'd be like every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes or every 5 minutes. They weren't consistent, but they were intense. So by the second day I was super tired and it was continuing, so I was going for walks, but I was getting tired at this point. I was like, because I was just waiting. I was like, why isn't this happening? And Julie came back and she said, you're only 1 centimeter still. Now, looking back, I know that this was prodromal labor. And it's like you have all of these contractions to kind of warm you up. But there was an issue, which we'll get to. So they were very intense. My body was working super hard at this point to contract, but nothing, she wasn't coming down and I wasn't dilating. So after the second day, Julie said that I should probably go into the hospital, and I definitely didn't want this because I planned a home birth. I had the water pool set up, everything was set up for home. I really wanted a home birth. But she said, I think maybe you go into the hospital because the baby's heart rate's dropping a little bit. And at that point I was so tired, I was like, yeah, whatever, let's just do that. When I got there, they hit me up with some morphine straight off the bat, and I didn't want any drugs, but I was like quite a lot of pain and very tired. The second I got there, they were like, right, you can't have any food or any water, just in case we have to take you in for a C-section. So I had no food and no water from this point. I went another entire day, so this was the third day, of ridiculously strong contractions, and I still was not dilating. I was still at like 1 centimeter, and so this had been 3 days now, and I was like so exhausted and I was so mad and I didn't know what to do, and I was screaming and I was like swearing at everyone and like saying like, I don't have anything, but whatever I have, you can have it, just get this fucking baby out of me. And they were just like, oh, everything's fine, everything's cool, this is what's supposed to happen. Now we're on day 4. And things were just so strong, and I had no water and no food at this point. They wouldn't allow me to have anything. So I had been in labor for 3 days full. One of the days I wasn't allowed any food and water. So they expect me to go and give birth to a baby without food and water and have no energy. This makes me so mad when I think about this. So we're on the 4th day. Wednesday now, and I labor all day without any food and water, and by like, I can't remember, it must have been like early afternoon, I was like, get me the epidural, I want everything now. It's been 4 days, I'm in agony, I'm exhausted, just get me an epidural. And I hate this because I really didn't want this. This is like the worst I wanted it to be. So they give me an epidural and everything felt better, obviously. And I still wasn't dilating, so they gave me more drugs. They gave me oxytocin, and they gave me all these other drugs to try and dilate me. In the end, I finally hit 10 centimeters after like all of this time. So they were like, right, start pushing. Now this was a little blurry because I was so weak at this point. So I was pushing for quite a while, I think. And then the next thing I know, all of these surgeons are in the room, and doctors. There's a lot of them. I don't remember, like 10, I don't remember, there was a lot. And they got a vacuum cup and they put it up, and they were trying to pull her out because she just was not coming down. She just wasn't, there was something definitely wrong. When she came down, her head finally came out and her cord was so taut, and they went in and felt, and her cord was wrapped around her entire body, so she couldn't progress down at all. Her body was just trapped in this cord. So they pulled her right out, and when they got her out, they had to cut her cord too early. Her head was out, but they cut her cord then and pulled her out. They took her away because I didn't even see her. I remember them putting her on my belly, but I don't remember anything really because I was just so out of it by this point. And they took her away. They just went out the room and took her away. Then they asked Gary to leave. They said, Gary, you need to get out now. And all of these surgeons rushed in. Then they proceeded to rip my placenta out of me with their hands because it wasn't coming out. And at this point I had a massive hemorrhage. And I remember the two nurses being at the end of the bed, and I just felt this warm gush, and I looked up and it just went all over them and up the wall, and they stood back shocked. And if they were shocked, like the nurses, that they must see this often, and I was screaming, and I have never heard these noises come from anyone, not even in a horror movie. Like, I lost my voice. I was screaming so hard because they were torturing me. They had their arm up inside of me trying to get my placenta out in chunks. And I had a massive hemorrhage, and then I passed out. So that's what happened. This is what Gary told me after, is that he just heard me screaming for my life, and then someone came out, put their hand on his shoulder and said, I am so sorry. And he thought we were dead. He had no idea where his baby was. This really upsets me. It's a horrible thing to remember. He thought that his baby and I was dead. And a few minutes after, I stopped screaming because I passed out. And then he was told that he could go in and go into Willow. She was fine. She didn't need resuscitating or anything, but she had some meconium, so they just wanted to suction her a little bit. Then he got to hold his baby, but he still thought I was dead. He didn't know. And eventually they said that I was all like cleaned up and good to go, and I was back around, and he could come in and see me. And I was just lying there. And I remember there was a window, and I just was looking out the window. And he came in with my baby, and I didn't even want to hold her. He was stood there with her, and I just couldn't even look at them. I was so traumatized. And eventually they wheeled me out into another room, back into a private room. And I was hooked up to all of these machines because I lost a lot of blood. And eventually I held her. And there's a picture of me holding her. And I'm really grey. I just didn't look good. I wasn't happy. And I didn't know what to feel. And I didn't know, I was worried while I was pregnant about having a girl because I don't have a connection with my mother. And I was so worried about not having a bond with my daughter. And this scared me. And this labor was so traumatizing that I was so scared that it was gonna really affect us. And I finally held her, and it took a while, and I just held her. And we had all that time in that room just to be together then, and Gary was very upset. I was obviously very upset, and I just didn't let go. And eventually, we were wheeled back into this semi-private room with this woman who I'd been laboring with previously, and she came and had her baby way before me. And I brought my baby in, and something clicked inside of me, and this maternal instinct just turned on. And I realized that no matter who your family are, where you were born into, you make your own family, and everything is different. And the connection, you make those connections, you make those bonds. It's nothing to do with what you were born into. And I realized that at that moment that I had created this baby, and she was mine, and we will always be together. And from that moment on, I never thought differently. We are so close. She is the reason I'm alive, although it nearly killed me. She is definitely the reason that I'm still alive to this day. I have progressed in my life because of her. She is the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And although it was one of the worst things that physically happened, I'm so glad I had her. She's the most beautiful person, and she's crazy and peppy, so peppy, but she's kind and generous and so good at sharing, and she's sweet. And we were supposed to be together, me and her. She chose me, for sure. And now, I know, because it's been 5 years, she just turned 5, I know that we were supposed to be together. And we have such a bond, such a connection, and we are so in love. And that, it was worth it. I can say that, it was worth it going through all of that. But clearly it's super traumatizing, and I've never spoken about it like in detail like that before. So there we go. That was my birth story of Willow. She was born after 81 hours at 5:43 p.m. and she was 7 pound 5, 54 centimeters long. Same as me. I was 54 centimeters. And she was healthy, and 2 days later I checked myself out as soon as I could because I hated being there. And we finally got to go home, and I left really late at night. And they were like, well, you shouldn't be leaving. And I said, I need to go now. I couldn't be in there any longer, so I left 2 days later. That was the best night of my life. Not the 16th of September when she was born, the 18th of September when we got to leave. Because I got to walk out very, very slowly. I couldn't walk. I was very traumatized physically as well. And by the time I got into the car, Gary was driving so slow. I was like, don't go over any bumps. She was in the back, and it was a starry night. And I remember the drive home was the most beautiful night. And I was so happy to be going home to my house with my new baby. And that's where our journey began. Yeah, Willow Shawn Andrews, best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, that was part 1, and I hope that I didn't upset too many people. I hope that someone enjoyed this. I don't know if people have had very similar experiences, and I'm sorry that it wasn't the most positive birth story. I really wanted it to be. But when we got home, everything was good. and we were super happy from that day on. Me and my daughter have had such a strong connection and a strong bond. So, yeah. Hey guys, this is part 2. This is my birth story of River. So like before, I had prodromal labor. So what happened was on a Sunday night, maybe the 15th, I was in bed and it was like 2:30 a.m. and I thought my water had broken. And it wasn't my waters, but it was a cervical gush of fluid. But I have never had my waters broken. So, because the first time in France they broke my waters when I was giving birth. So I just assumed again it was my water breaking, and it wasn't. So I called my midwife, and I have a midwife here in Canada, and they're about an hour away, and they don't come to this area, so you have to go to their area, which is kind of inconvenient. But we found like a little place out there, like a small little Airbnb, and Gary's mom was here, Wendy, so we woke her up, we got Willow up, we just got in the car, everything was already packed, so we just headed up. By the time we got there, I had very mild contractions. And Molly, my midwife, met me there, and she did this test on the water that I thought was my waters breaking. It's like a cotton swab, and it turns blue if it's amniotic fluid, and it didn't, so it wasn't my waters. And she actually went into the lab and checked, but it wasn't, because I was like, it must be, I was losing loads of water. I just kept dripping out, but apparently it wasn't. Anyway, they were very irregular, again, my contractions. And we paid for this place for 2 days. But after like the first day, I didn't want to waste the money that we had spent on this little Dory house in this really cute little county. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. So we went home, like at the end of that day. I can't remember if we stayed there and left the next morning. I can't remember if we stayed there and left the next morning or if we went back that night. I can't remember. But by the time I got home, they were just every hour, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, and they weren't that intense. So I actually went a whole other day. So this was the Tuesday now, all of that day, same thing, just irregular contractions. And I was scrubbing the floor and doing things to bring it on. And again, I was just like waiting for something to happen, because that's, what else can you do? That's what I thought anyway at the time. By Wednesday afternoon, so another whole day, Wednesday afternoon, they started getting intense. It was like 4:30. Gary didn't want to go to work, but I made him go to work that day because I said, look, nothing's happening. Wendy was here to look after Willow. So about 4:30 in the afternoon, they started picking up and they started getting intense to the point where I couldn't talk through them after this. So I was like, right, I'm not going back to Lunenburg. I'm just gonna have a free birth at home. So we went upstairs to our bedroom and we prepped everything, and I wanted to do a free birth. And then I got to the transitional stage where I was just, it had been 3 days, right? So I was so tired, so exhausted. My body was so tense from the contractions for all of these days that I had no idea how far along I was. And I was screaming, like, I was just so upset that this was happening again. And I just thought, well, what if the same thing happens as last time? So I was just panicking, like, what if she's wrapped in her cord? What if the same thing happens? I was very stressed. Now, I was so glad that Wendy was there because she was bathing Willow. And at like 8 o'clock, I was like, right, I'm gonna go into the hospital. And I hated it. I called it the H word. I was like, don't mention the H word. I don't want to go there. I was so traumatized. But I ended up going. And as I was getting there in the car, my waters broke for a fact. Because I felt it. It was a massive warm gush and I went, oh, my water just broke. That's definitely my water. So, which felt amazing. Because I was like, oh, I've never had that before. I was in my PJ pants, Christmas red PJ pants, didn't give a shit, my dressing gown on. I got to the maternity bit, Gary went and parked, and I walked in, was having contractions, and I was just so exhausted, and this ridiculously cute guy came up to me and was like, let me help you, and he got me a wheelchair. Whilst I was having contractions, I was holding onto his arm going, God damn it, you're so cute. And I looked like shit. You know, and they send this really cute guy over. So that was great. As I was dripping out amniotic fluid, it was hot. So he got me into the chair and took me into the little place where you register, and I was just like, so scared. I was so scared. And they took me into a room to examine me to check how far along I was, and they said I was 8 centimeters. And I was, inside I was like, okay, that's great, but I was still like in agony, because I just couldn't take it anymore. And then they took me up to the labor ward, and by the time I got there, they checked me and I was 10 centimeters. And I stayed at 10 centimeters for over 4 hours. I was so tight and tense, and everybody around me was so nice. It was a very different experience. Everyone was very nice, except for one person. There was a horrible gynecologist who I actually originally started seeing when I was pregnant, and she was so horrible that I stopped going to see her. And she, unfortunately, was on call, so she was the one that came in, and she was saying the horrible things about me to Gary while I was in this situation, asking why I was even there. I thought I wanted a home birth. She just was horrible. Horrible person. And anyway, there was a nice man that came in. I don't know what he was, a nurse or whatever he was. And he checked me and said that River's head was slightly tilted because he could feel her ear. And he was very nice and very calm and so sweet, and he said, I think you would benefit from just having something to ease your pain a little bit. And at this point I was like, just give it to me. I don't care anymore. I tried so hard again to have the home birth. It's been 3 days, I'm exhausted, I'm in agony, I cannot do it anymore. Get it for me. So the anaesthetist came in, gave me another epidural, and I felt shit about it, but I really tried. The second he gave it to me, I was like, oh my God, I love you. Your job is just so amazing. You're just such a good person. Because it just immediately relieved my pain. Just enough for me to just relax. So everybody left. Me and Gary were there. I could still feel my contractions. I could still feel my legs. On the first time I couldn't actually move my leg. They had done it a little bit too far to one of the, I think to the right or to the left, and I actually couldn't move my leg. So this time I could feel my legs, I could move them, I could still feel my contractions. I just had it enough to relieve my pain and relax enough for me to not be so tight. So I had it for an hour, and I was at 10 centimeters, and after an hour, I was like, right, turn it off. Let's just get going now because I've had enough. And the nice man checked me again. He was like, right, you're ready. This is good. We're gonna go now. And I was now from this moment, I was so happy and so excited because I was like, is this really happening? Am I gonna do it now? Is this gonna work? Is it gonna work? And they were like, yeah, and everything. They were very calm. They were so sweet. And I literally pushed for a few minutes. I felt her come down. I felt myself open like a flower blooming. I felt everything. It felt incredible. And I just felt her head come out. Then I felt a pop where her shoulder came out, and another pop where her other shoulder came out. and then another push, and she just, this slippery little thing was just put on my chest. She was out. 1:01 a.m. October 18th, Thursday morning. And I was ecstatic. I was so happy because that part didn't hurt at all. I remember going, God, it just felt so good. I felt everything. It was so amazing. But the only bad part was it was the horrible woman, the gynecologist woman who actually delivered her. And I actually shouted at her at one point because she was an asshole. Anyway, so I have her on my chest. I was holding her. I was so happy. And everything went well. There was not very much blood. A few minutes later, this is the part I don't like. They were like, you know, they rush to get your placenta out. They were like, oh, the placenta's nearly ready. So they clamped it after 1 minute. I hate that, because I don't like that at all. They clamped it after 1 minute. My placenta came out, and they cut it. Oh, Gary cut it, actually. He didn't get to do that the first time, because they had to cut Willow out. So he got to cut the cord, and I was just like, I don't care, I'm good, I'm happy, I got my baby. And the nice girl, actually, because I wanted to have the placenta, I can't remember if I wanted to take it home or do something with it, she actually did a tree of life picture for me. So she got a piece of card and actually put the placenta on it, and it was amazing. She did this, she was so sweet. She was showing me, I have a bit of a thing for placentas. I think they're so incredible. They're amazing. So she got to do that. So I have this awesome picture, which I'll try and find and insert, of this tree of life placenta of River. And I got to hold her for an hour, or however long I wanted to. And we were rubbing her and she was crying, and I didn't want to move her. I couldn't see her face at this point. I didn't want to move her too much. It was just like, so like, oh, everything's okay. And I felt good and I was cleaned up. An hour later, I went in the shower. Like, I walked into the shower. And I don't think this is something that, for the next time I'm not doing this, but I was so happy that I wasn't physically that traumatized, that nothing went wrong. That I was like, oh, I can do this. So I walked into the shower, had a shower, and I was very weak. I shouldn't have been. And then they took me into a semi-private room, and I couldn't sleep because of the adrenaline and the oxytocin. I was so happy. And every half an hour they come in and make you pee and check on you, because it was semi-private. So every half an hour it'd be the other woman, then it'd be me, and it was just a nightmare. I was like, just leave us alone, we're fine. And River was so cool and so calm. Gary had a little bed set up next to me. He was gone, he was asleep. And I was just like, this is amazing. Like, I just gave birth. It was so amazing. And it really healed me. It really did. At the time, I was very happy that it was done. And I didn't hemorrhage, I didn't pass out, my baby wasn't taken away from me. So I was very happy with the end result. And a couple hours later, I was just like, let's go, let's just check out. And the horrible woman came in, and she was like saying about all of her concerns about if I leave too early, and I was like, stop talking, I'm leaving now. We are fine, we are good. So I checked myself out and went home. And I walked to the car, and I was so happy. And I got back, and Willow and Wendy were here, and Willow is the most amazing sister. She was so happy and so excited to see the baby. It was such a good experience. The end part, coming home, is always the best. So it's a different type of story. I didn't get upset because the first one was very traumatic for me, as you guys saw. And this time around it was way better for me. Equally as long. Well, I figured it out, it was 70 hours from the morning of I woke up to the gush to when I gave birth. So it was 70 and a half hours. So I have like really ridiculously long labors. So this time, part 3 will be coming end of January, early February, and I hope that it's a different story and I'm just here at home. and I get to do my home birth, my free birth here. So please keep your fingers crossed. So anyway, if you have any questions, leave them down below. Please subscribe and comment and share. I hope these stories were good. I know the first one was a little bit shitty, but those are my birth stories. And now I have 2 beautiful girls, and we're so happy, we're so in love, and I can't wait to birth baby number 3. I'm a little bit nervous, obviously. I really just want to get my home birth. I want us to be healthy and happy, and I want to just be here in a comfortable environment. And I've also researched a lot. I've learned so much since having my 2 children. It's so funny how you think you know, but you just don't know. And I've researched a lot, and now I know about prodromal labor. Now I know how to handle things better and different breathing techniques, and I've just prepped a lot better than the first 2 times. Don't get me wrong, I'm quite loud. I'm probably gonna still scream the house down, but we'll see what happens. I'm way more confident and very excited, still nervous, but we shall see. So I hope you guys liked my birth videos, and thanks for watching. Bye!